Warning. Warning. The following program depicts exercises which, depending upon your physical condition, may be hazardous to your health.
Money, credit, debt, economic cycle in which there's a building up of debt in a cyclical way that becomes too large, and we're going to have problems. We're going to have a government debt problem. Maybe we can get into this.
Ray Dalio. Is he right? Is he wrong? But before I get into that, let's give credit where credit is due. He's speaking about a problem that most want to try to sweep under the rug, ignore, or minimize. At least he's acknowledging the immensity of the problem. But he says we're going to have a debt problem. Going to. This is the process of we're having one at the moment. All you have to do is look back, 10 to 15 years at the debt clock? Just take a look at the debt clock from 2009, where we were up to, $9 trillion or so? But today, this number is so astonishing. It's unreal. We're up to $38 trillion and on our way to $40 trillion in a year or so. That's not going to have a problem. The problem is now we just gotten used to the numbers at such a large scale. And that's the real problem. Accustomed to the dysfunction. And you won't hear that from him.
Talking about a recession, do you think it is likely that the United States will dip into a recession because of President Trump's tariffs?
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled.
In business, words matter. He says we're at a decision-making point. I have to tell him, though, that decision-making process was done long ago, and it has passed. It was made in 1989, around that time, when Seymour Durst was telling him about it with the debt clock. He knew that once they made a decision, it will be almost impossible to reverse. The decision he's talking about is nothing but a Band-Aid to try to hold back the tide. Again, I'll give him credit where credit's due. He understands that the problem is not as simple as giving it a title. What we're seeing is an abnormality that is so outside the norms that putting a predictable outcome on it would be foolish. And that's what's happening right now. If you rewind back to what he says there's an imbalance. There's an imbalance. That word there is key. And those are terms that CEO and those in business use. Why? It indicates that something is happening that is unstable. It is unpredictable. And thus it is dangerous. Why? Because businesses depend on stability, depends on routine. It depends on outcome of cause. But this is confusion. It's uncertainty. And you want to know what's going to send an investor, an economist running around like chickens with their heads cut off? Is when somebody says they're uncertain. Uncertainty.
We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order.
This isn't shocking at all. Those who are trained in the right mentality of business saw this coming decades ago. Like Seymour Durst. Seymour in 1989. He saw the problem of fiscal imbalance way before this person started to sound the alarm. He was sounding the alarm way back then. And what he's describing when he says a breakdown of the monetary system. But this is no different from someone who eats too much. And becomes physically obese, because this is fiscal obesity. Just like somebody will start to have problems if they consume too much, they gain too much weight, their mobility starts to slow down, and all types of health issues start to develop. This is exactly what's happening to the monetary system. It is buckling under the immense weight of all the debt, just like a person who is physically obese.
What is your prediction for where the country is headed right now?
We're going to have a supply-demand problem for debt at the same time as we have these other problems. And the results of that will be worse than a normal recession.
It's funny. If you kick a problem down the road and you pass on debt to your generations, a problem that could have been simply dealt with, of course, is going to be worse than a normal recession.
What is the solution here?
Well, there are a series of solutions, but let's take the most important. 3% of GDP, bring that deficit down. It can be done in a bipartisan way. Explain how that could be done. Doing things together for the greater good. Doing things together for the greater good.
Doing things together for the greater good.
So, after all this, it comes down to hope. Hope that there's bipartisan cooperation. Hope that they're willing to work together for the greater good. With all due respect, I do understand, but as he laid out, the situation is far more complicated than you can imagine. If I went into a business meeting with my investors to lay out a strategy, and I told them, my strategy is I hope that our competitors will work together for the greater good, they would laugh at me, and I wouldn't blame them. I've been doing this for a long time and developed certain metrics to gauge a business health. And let me tell you right now, from my experience, I do not see an easy way out of this problem or solution. Sometimes the cure is just as painful as the disease, because you're facing two major issues here. You're facing a fiscal imbalance, which is enormous, and you're also facing a psychological balance, which is equally enormous, by people becoming addicted to debt. And in that addiction, they have become acclimated to having a certain standard of life. If you told an addict that they needed to stop and you left them to their vices, what do you think the outcome of this tactic will be? What are their odds of succeeding and returning back to normality? Even if by some miracle they were able to hold out for a few days or cut back down to a normal percentage, how long before they revert? And when they do, how long before it becomes worse? But what do I know? I'm just a CEO. Thanks for watching.